Welcome back to the Marketing Grind, a marketing podcast that is all about B2B marketing inside the trenches, talking about what's working, what's not, and why it all matters. Of course, it's incomplete without my brother Gary. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Glad to be back. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, and yeah, happy to be back on the mic, coffee in
Yeah, a
hand,
little
talking to you.
yeah, a little bit of a lull, but that's okay. We're regrouping. Of course, this show is fueled by caffeine. So before we get into anything we want to discuss, we got to talk about coffee. And as we record this is midday. So this is like you're coming back from lunch, you're feeling a little sluggish, you're hitting that coffee pot that's sitting there in the corner just to get you through the next few hours. So with that said, Gary, what is getting you through the next few hours of work today?
Yeah, I'm excited to be recording before 4 p.m. Typically, our recording times are like in the later afternoon, and yeah, it's noon. So once again, I am accompanied by a very delicious bean from Atlas Coffee. So this month's selection from Nicaragua, and
You said
I
that
brought the
right.
taste.
Yeah, you said
I
that
brought the
right.
tasting notes with me. A viscous cup capturing a syrupy character, gentle sweetness like toffee or
Hmm,
cajeta, and almond milk
interesting.
like finish. So I'm
I
excited to
dig
get
it.
into it. The tasting notes are creme brulee, dark chocolate, and molasses.
Again, Atlas Coffee, if you want to sponsor this podcast.
It's a beautiful cup. A
Yeah,
beautiful
looks
cup.
great.
What do you got, man?
All right. So I mean, I got my thing in my trusty Yeti just to keep it nice and warm. I know you're a
Nice.
cold brew guy. I like to keep it hot. Actually, this is from Blue Bottle. It's nothing crazy. It's their balance blend. Just something to keep me going throughout the day. Tasty notes, really like when I sip it, cocoa. You got that chocolate component coming through it. You got a little caramel too, which I think kind of blends nicely with the chocolate. And then you get like this little zest of citrus. So there's I think you get it more in the nose, like when you like grind it.
Mm-hmm.
When you taste it, yeah, you can pull it out if you want to. But after I ground the coffee and I gave it a little sniff, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do get that lemony zest. Like there's something there. So
Nice.
um, tastes good. I'm keeping it warm just to get me through the pod and get me through the rest of the day. So yeah,
Yeah, Blue Bottle. They made a big splash early on in like the third wave resurgence, and I forget exactly where they started. I think they might have started downtown LA, right?
I don't know.
Or were they in
I
the
don't know
Bay
why I
Area?
want to say San Fran, but I
Yeah.
gotta. I don't know. I think it was somewhere here in California.
Yeah, I think it might have been Bay Area. They had like a pretty big name list of investors. They
Yeah,
got
it was one of the
purchased,
big
right? Were they
ones.
purchased by Nestle?
Oh, I
Do you
couldn't
remember
tell you
that?
at this point. I don't know. I
I
don't
thought
know.
that they were bought out a while back, but maybe I could be thinking of somebody else.
Well, I mean, just given the amount of
Well, we
stores
have
that
Google
popped
right
up
here.
and
I
all
need to
that.
know.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Hey, Gary, look it up. Come on.
All
Put it
right.
up on the screen. Pull up on the screen.
Who is Blue Bottle owned by? Nestle. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. There you go.
September 2017.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was like the perfect time. Like that was like the big third wave coffee brands coming out. I remember a big one that I was into, and I think they got bought out was Handsome Roasters. You remember them, like downtown LA?
Yes. I remember the name. I don't know. I don't think I ever went to their location.
I never went, but they got bought out too. And this is back when like it had like Barista Joe, the coffee brand, or the coffee blog. Got to bring it back. Is coffee still a thing? I hope coffee's still a thing.
I mean, we're making it a thing on this pod.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's make it a thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
All
on
right.
this
Yeah. So
one,
this coffee is
marketing's a
delicious. Cheers. Crowbars up.
thing. Yeah.
Good stuff. That's really good.
Yeah, it holds true. It holds true. Yeah, I think I need to get into like a coffee subscription program because I just drink some of the maybe more generic stuff, but it's good. It does the job.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, marketing. Okay, so this is the topic that is it's super interesting, and I think it relates to like a lot of different aspects of marketing organizations as it relates to just leads, brand awareness, everything. And this is something that you're harped on about. So, what is it? Marketing for the consideration set. That's a very technical description. You want to break that down a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So this is the we're teasing the topic of the episode 10 minutes in. No, this is a topic that is um very active. It's taken a very active part of my brain the last few weeks. And really for a couple different reasons. And the main reason here is that I recently realized that everything I knew about doing marketing has been wrong. And that's been a painful realization. And I wanted to, I'm continuing to think about, and I wanted to talk a little bit about like where I've come from in my thinking, why I think it's the right direction, and what I'm working on to kind of lean into it more. So,
Well, like, okay, so everything you've been doing up to this point is wrong. Like, what have you been doing up to this point that you feel
um,
is not going right?
I feel like having a short term, simplistic view of conversion focused marketing programs.
Yeah, we've
Um,
talked about that like a ton, right?
yeah, yeah, we've talked about it a ton, and we've talked about like tactically how you can shift that. And so, what I think I'm, what I'm hitting on here is more like conceptually and like psychologically, how do you shift the way you think about what marketing is trying to do, not how you do it. So what is it that marketing is really trying to do for you? um, it really started last year when I started going all in on B2B, and I essentially kind of overhauled our marketing programs to better fit these B2B clients. And in this process, I've, implemented, a lot of the kind of zero click stuff that we've talked about, a lot of this kind of like long term brand building view of marketing, but without shifting the way we set expectations personally, internally with our team, externally with our clients about what this type of marketing is designed to do. So, as a result of that, and I've talked about this before, like when you look at some of the programs we're running on paper, it's like, what's not working here? Why is lead growth? Why is pipeline contribution just uh, not where we expect it to be from an attribution standpoint?
Well, I
And
mean, I think
we've talked
are
about
we
this
going off of like
attribution.
old playbooks? Is that the problem? Like, right? Because like there's an old school mentality in terms of demand gen
Yeah,
and the playbooks you need to follow in terms of achieving the pipeline numbers, the opportunities generated from marketing, and of course attribution. We'll get to attribution later,
yeah.
but is that the problem? Is it really like is it the old school playbook that a lot of marketers are going off of? Is that
I
it?
don't think it's the playbook. I mean, in my situation, it's not the playbook. It's
Okay.
the mindset, like who are you marketing for? And so it's really developing an empathetic understanding of the buyer. So we've talked about audience a lot, right? We've talked about like being empathetic to your audience, doing marketing in service of them. But take this a step further, take this to like performance, right? You're thinking about like who's actually buying the product, and thinking about like setting expectations for how frequently you expect buyers to enter the market, the volume and pacing in which someone hears about your brand, feels the pain associated with your product, and then raises their hand for a demo or a consult. Like all of that stuff um, is complex, and I think that me personally, what I've discovered is that my kind of 15 years of training in marketing didn't really set me up to think about this right. And there's a few data points that have come up, that I think have really pushed me into this way of thinking. So, first one, if you're in B2B LinkedIn at all these days, you're hearing someone talk about the 95-5 rule. And and because it's pretty catchy, right? And so it's like pretty simplistic, pretty catchy. It's a little bit eye opening. There's a lot more kind of depth behind the surface, but essentially it's this: in B2B at any given time, only about 5% of your target audience is in market, hand raised, ready to buy, and 95% of your market is not.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're sending sales teams into into a craze right here with that number, 5%. But also with marketing teams, because like I think performance based marketing teams are like, well, shit. If that's the mentality I need to take, if that's the rule, then hey, maybe I'm not doing as bad of a job, or maybe we need
that's
to do
exactly it.
something different.
That's exactly it. It's hey, you're not doing as bad of a job. Like you're not dealing with your entire TAM trying to move them into pipeline. Like you're literally, it's a re-understanding of only a small percentage. The 95-5 is an approximation based on data studies of different industries, but in general, the study found that it's about a 95-5 split. And so, yes, demand gen marketers, everything is okay. You are doing just fine. I think we all need
Oh,
that little bit of
Jesus
reassurance.
Christ. God, I can't, I don't even want to. That's every marketer does that, right? At the end of the quarter, too. It's like they're looking at their pipeline numbers, and every organization is different. So they got to think about things a little bit differently in terms of how they're being, measured. But no, that's a great stat. And I love that stat because that makes me feel better as a marketer, too.
And part of that study also is, and this is something that I got deeply wrong. Once I understood that, and I understood that kind of conceptually without the data, but once I saw the 95-5 rule and read into it, I was like, of course. But what demand gen and demand capture kind of get wrong is that, if you market to the 95% that is not in market, and you promote educational content about the problem from all different angles, what the solution looks like that, you can somehow educate a person in market. And what this research shows is that is a fallacy. That the contributing factors that move a buyer in market are completely outside of the marketer's control, and they're completely environmental factors on the buying side. So changes in budget internally, a boss leaves the company, and all of a sudden there's a promotion. Like there's environmental, budget opens up for at the end of the year, and all of a sudden they're in market because they need to spend the money. Like there's a ton of different things. New competitor comes in market, things that you cannot control. So is education important? Yes. Can you educate someone in market? The research shows that you can't. So that's something that, like, as another expectation setter internally and externally, I think is like really important for us to understand.
Yeah. Well, it almost makes me think like from a contextual standpoint, like from content generation, like can you actually, I mean, pinpoint some of these factors, these triggers that lead people to maybe reconsider and create content around like, hey, like did this person just leave? I mean, maybe that's not a good example. But but around those certain triggers that may lead somebody to then again reconsider your product again, and be able to work with your team, work with your content team, and be able to market something like that to help the new person that is coming in, or help the new situation sort of ease into considering your product again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I think maybe your use of the word again reflects your role in customer marketing, but
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, the scenario really is like they don't know you, like the like brand awareness is essentially zero.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I guess I was thinking more of like, okay, if they've been like in touch with like your sales team already, like they've been in touch. But I guess again, like it's a situation where somebody leaves and then somebody else comes in. Your sales team comes back in and say, hey, like we've been talking to so and so about this. Wanted to talk about it again. Here's a new piece of collateral. Um, Collateral being
yeah, I
more
think
of a
like
marketing term, but
yeah,
yeah.
it's I think that's very kind of one-off outlier type stuff. Like is that person in market or are they not? Like we don't have enough information to know that at this point in time. Just because like something changed at their end doesn't mean they're instantly in market. But you're correct in that there is a kind of tactical approach to this. I'll get into it in just a second. I think there's a couple other data points I want to make here that kind of make the case for like why shifting this mindset is so important. The second piece is a study that recently came out from Sixth Sense that talks about the buying process, and this relates exactly to what you're talking about, to be honest, is that bef- that 70% of the buying journey is done before their first touch with the sales team. So we tend to think of it that like there's a short kind of awareness educational consideration period, and then sales gets involved once intent reaches a certain level, and that we're going to kind of like nurture them through some type of pipeline journey. But the actual way that buyers buy, and if you think about you yourself, if you've ever been in the buying seat on the B2B side, that there is you hear of something through your network, through people you know, at a conference, in an email newsletter. You do a Google search and you find vendors that are that solve a specific problem. Like you are doing your research and you're putting together your consideration list months and months and months in advance of you actually saying, all right, I got budget, i have I have sign off, like I'm ready to engage with a couple sales teams now and like pit a couple of my top choices against each other. So this is just an important thing to remember. 70% of the buying process is done before we even know that that person is in market. So again, 95% not in market. And then when they do become in market, 70% is done in that, kind of refined labs, like dark funnel area where we don't know what the hell's going on and attribution is murky, and people are doing their own stuff. So again, it does not mean that educational full funnel content and marketing programs are obsolete here. Quite the contrary. Like these things are important to happen, but is there attribution that justifies continued investment? That's where it becomes challenging because of this. But I think that's like an interesting point that 70% is done before they even emerge as a prospect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in my own experience too, like if I'm taking on like a new product, new service, and if I had a good experience prior with another organization, which is why like maybe I'll harp on like customer marketing or even really customer success to that point.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a good experience and good relationship with a certain software or service, I'm more inclined to bring that to my next organization, and I bypass all of the sales aspect of it. I mean, we'll go through it, right? But
Yeah.
to that point of like the 70% of buying done before. Um, yeah, I mean, it's almost like, yeah, we'll entertain a couple other vendors just to see, but my mind's sort of already made up.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
that's a brand. Like what we're talking about is like is this
Yeah.
brand has made an impression, has nurtured some kind of loyalty with you, or at least like cemented their connection to a key problem that you're trying to solve, and demonstrated proof over and over and over through content that they they solve that problem. That's really what's happening there.
Yeah. I mean, but isn't that what that 70% is? Like when they're making up their mind, it's they understand what brands fit their needs and they've done the research and they're sort of going off of reputation, they're going off of maybe some reviews, they're going off of word of mouth. It's all
Yep.
about brand at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's like a maybe a tiny, tiny window for you to sneak in via search or something like that. If someone's gonna try to like build out their vendor list or consideration set and see if like, hey, maybe there's someone that I haven't heard of that we want to add to this list. This sometimes that happens, but it's a tiny, tiny window. So really the game is won before it even starts. So you have to really be marketing throughout that period of time. Um, and I think the last data point that I want to kind of just reiterate here that I think backs up what we're talking about is a recent study from Hockey Stack. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but basically they did some study with a bunch of their customers that said the average number of touch points for a lead to close is like 266 touch points. And there's a lot of flaws with this study in particular and how it was done. But I think the takeaway here is poignant and it backs up a point of view that I have. So I'm going to use it here. Essentially, that reach and frequency matter. So showing up with the right message over time, with in front of the right people, is what gets you on that list in that kind of like dark funnel when they're building their consideration set, when they're not in market, so that by the time they're in market, they've built that consideration set, they're ready to engage with sales. Your brand is top of the list. And really, these lists aren't long. They're not 12 vendors long. They're three, they're four, they're five. Like they're not much more than that. So we really have like a finite amount of space to occupy in what we kind of what's referred to as like mental availability. Like we really like a brand has to occupy that space, and if they can't, then the deal is dead before it even happens.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where similar brands are popping up left and right. And so you're going to get a lot of attention around the legacy brands. But if you're a brand new logo coming, to the market, your sales team's hitting it hard, you got to come up with something memorable. And I love that term mental availability because we don't have much of it, especially as decision makers that are looking at new solutions and new things to bring on. If you're a salesperson, even on a marketing side too, um, you got to come into it with something memorable and something that really attacks that availability into their mind.
Yeah,
I love that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So kind of taking these data points in mind and kind of this story that we're telling ourselves. And, when we started this out, I was trying to explain it and you're like, well, haven't we talked about this? Haven't we done this? So hopefully, through this data, we've kind of made the case that there is a mindset shift. There's an ecosystem shift that we have to take as marketers, right?
Yeah. Well, I think like the context for me was like, hey, like we've always talked about, getting away from the short term metrics, getting into the long term goals and performance there. And so this sort of fits in right into that conversation. So I think like that just sort of fits into the theme of like what we've always wanted to talk about. And as marketers, what we always struggle with, as we're like harped on quarter to quarter, did you hit this? Did you hit that? And it's, sometimes it's just about pipeline too. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, like doesn't matter what we hit in this quarter, but like we've generated X amount in this ongoing pipeline. So it is about that long term struggle or long term, you know, outlook in terms of what we want to achieve as marketers, and getting away from that short term stuff, because it stresses us out, and it makes us not focused on the most important things.
Yeah. Well, I think this is where the rubber meets the road, because your exec team, like, this is all well and good. Like, what we're talking about is like the why justification for why long term might matter more than short term. But ultimately, like, you can't abandon the short term, you can't abandon demand gen. So it's more of about a balance, right? So, like, how do you balance between the two? Some of the data I've read is that, like, having like a 40% brand, 60% demand gen split between your kind of effort, activity, budget makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, it depends on your brand, kind of how mature you are in your category, how active your buyers are. A lot of different factors will determine what that split looks like. But I think we can all agree that a balanced split is really where this all lives. Like, you need marketing that attacks the 5%. And then you need demand gen that attacks the 5%, and you need brand marketing that attacks the 95. So yeah, it's really just about balance. And so if we're talking about like KPIs, tactics, like, what is our objective here? Thinking about brand over performance is something that I'm doing more and more. It's something I'm coaching our clients to think about more and more, as we're kind of working with earlier stage, kind of less mature, or brands with less market share. Hey, man, we can turn on a demand gen engine for you, pump a bunch of money into it, and go for volume, right? But lead quality will be low. Your conversion rates through the pipeline are going to be somewhat abysmal. Or we can do a little bit of that, keep the sales team hungry with some lead flow while also investing in brand, so that in 18 months, you are seeing efficiencies on the demand gen side that you couldn't see if you didn't make that investment. So, brand over performance, I think, is something that I'm trying to push more and more. That concept of mental availability is another one. So, instead of focusing on lead gen, focusing on mental availability. The hard part with those two things is mental availability is hard to measure, and conversions are easy to measure. So that's where, like, I think we've kind of leaned into, what's easy for us to do with the modern Martech stack. But keeping in mind that, like, we're not really trying to get you to click. We're trying to get you to know our brand and associate it with some of the key problems that we're best positioned to solve. If you take that shift, if you phrase it the right way, your content POV is different. Your reporting looks different. The way you talk, and kind of build a narrative around the programs you're running is completely different. And then lastly, just impressions and clicks. So, like, I'd much rather have more impressions in front of the right ICP versus a really great click through rate. That's counterintuitive. I wouldn't have said that 9 months ago. So today I'm thinking a lot more about impressions, visibility, mental availability, and thinking little less, or placing less importance on clicks, conversions, and just general, like, performance marketing KPIs.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the shift is around content. You think back to the good old days when old Gary Vee was like, every company should think of themselves as a media company, and be able to produce content organically that is going to generate that brand awareness, that is going to create content that really plays into their solution solving, right? So it's not just fun, happy-go-lucky content. It's like it really ties into like what they do for a consumer. And you generate something like that, you generate that engine, you start generating that ongoing pipeline, or really that interest that develops into pipeline, and then demand gen, their job tends to be relatively easy at that point, because then you're just sort of managing like what comes in organically, and it all sort of feeds in organically. You're not spending a bunch of money on paid ads and all that crap. You're really investing the money not here, but you're investing the money in that content, in that content world. And I think really that's kind of 2025. That's what we're thinking about on my end, anyways. Is how do where can we invest more in content? And I think a lot of brands should be thinking that way too, in terms of where best they sell, right? Whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Invest in the content, make it native, as we've always talked about, like best performing stuff. Um, it's all about. I think content marketing is the big play now.
Yeah, and I mean Gary Vee said that many years ago, and some forward-thinking brands have caught on, and some are still catching on. I agree, but with this caveat, um, brands have made these investments over the last 5 to 10 years, and have seen diminishing returns, have seen failed efforts. So it's not just creating content, right? It's creating the right content the right way with the right frequency. And so when you think about marketing from this point of view, so marketing for the consideration set, you have to think about what is consideration, what gets people, what shifts your buyers from out of market to in market. And so coming back around to a question you posed earlier, this is exactly what I'm working on today. I'm building a content strategy built around this concept of category entry points. So what is the universe of environmental factors that push a buyer from being out of market to in market? And it's some of those things we rattled off earlier, that are outside of our control, but it's important that we know them. We understand the problems, like the little universe of problems and questions that surround each one of those things, and then understand like how connected your brand, your product is to each one of those things. Because ultimately, like that list could be really long. That list could be hundreds of different things, depending, especially if we're talking about an enterprise product like what you're marketing. That could be a very intensive list. So it really is about like focusing, filtering that list down, and then attacking it systematically. So if you have kind of 10 different core category entry points that are really relevant to your audience and to your product, to your buyer, then what is the one or two that you should focus on in 2025? Because what we're seeing here, with this concept of mental availability, is it isn't just an impression, a one and done. This is repeated exposure, of a particular message, come with content from different angles in different platforms and channels in different formats. So essentially, like building like memory structures takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of repetition. And so your content program needs to be focused around that. So typically when you're doing content marketing, you'll do some ideation around topics, and kind of thinking through like what is like our core content category, and then like let's go through the universe of topics, let's ping sales, support, success teams, let's do our keyword research, our social listening, and let's build out that list. But ultimately, like that ends up being a lot of topics, and some of them have something to do with each other and some of them don't, and some of them will have connection to your category entry points, but a lot of them won't. And so what you need to do really is like layer that against your category entry points, and really be like bought in to speaking to those things repeatedly over time through your content program. That's where you're going to see memory structures start to hit. And part of what we're working on too is like measurement for this. And it's like I was saying, it's challenging because your kind of common martech stack just doesn't do this, but it really requires some amount of research, both qual and quant, to be able to measure like with a subset of your ICP, um, what brands do they think of when they think of X category entry point, X problem that they're trying to solve, and measuring that early on and seeing where does your brand fall in that mix, and then measuring that over time and making sure that you are penetrating that list higher and higher, and understanding and explaining to leadership that these things don't happen within a 1 year period of time. Like these things happen 18, 24, 36 months. Like this is years and years of work. So that's kind of like where I'm at with like content strategy and like layering it back into this. You just need to be focused on like what brings buyers in market, and and tying your content strategy to that. It's a subtle but a strategic shift that really kind of takes a content marketing program to being like marketing focused, to being a little bit more aligned with what your sales team needs and wants to see from a qualification standpoint.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. And I think segmentation is like on top of that, right? It's just like you got to know when you're marketing, you got to know who you're talking to. You got to make sure that the message is right. Um, and it's all built contextually, for the segment that you're targeting at that point. Where they are in the buying cycle, who they are. Maybe it's even breaking it down by industry. Geez, like if you're going to like target a specific industry, they speak different languages than others, right? So it's all. I mean, you can get so deep into the segmentation side of things on that front too. It becomes insane.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're applying it at the enterprise level. Like
Oh yeah,
this is
and
pretty
and,
bad.
and that's yeah. I mean, that's where I come from. Is like
A
on
lot
the
of people are,
customer.
yeah, like in any type of mid-market or enterprise level, like you're it's going to be a massive exercise, and it's going to be a big practice in segmentation, and it's going to be a big practice in focus and prioritization. um, and it becomes easier when you're dealing in kind of the early stage categories where your product is focused around a kind of smaller set of features and kind of jobs to be done, and you can focus in on like a core audience profile, and you're not dealing with like 10 segments and 100 category entry points for each segment, and just it can get insane.
Yeah. Well, so okay, because we come from a couple different worlds here. On the agency side, right? Like, I mean, your clients are like, all right, this sounds great, right? But they want to see performance marketing. They want to see leads. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because I'm learning how to re-answer. I'm learning a new answer to that question, and I'm still figuring that out. But it really is like, how do we balance short term and long term marketing? So it starts in the sales process. It starts before we even enter into any formal engagement, and understanding like what their needs are, what their market looks like, and saying, okay, we're going to build a program. And this is part of Magneti's kind of differentiation, is that we are brand in demand. So we're going to build a program that markets to the 5% and is focused on lead gen for people in market, and then is also running a brand program that is content focused, is using research to identify category entry points, and not just like coming up with them off the top of our head, but really using voice of the customer to flesh those things out, and then having a long-term approach to content creation, content promotion, and there's a lot of focus in that too. So we have some clients that have multiple departments and segments to their business, and we have to say, like, for 2024, like, you're going to get more out of this if you focus on one of those versus trying to boil the ocean across your entire business. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it right now. And what we've seen, what I know to be true, is that a demand gen focused program that tries to squeeze out as much volume as it can out of that 5% in market without a proper brand foundation, without proper ongoing brand marketing attached to building those kind of brand mental connections is inefficient. And we can do, volume lead gen all day long, but your sales team better get ready for unproductive conversations, for a lot of busy working qualification. And when we start talking about it in those terms, the kind of second level impact of what this type of narrow approach to marketing can do, that's when people start perking up. So it's just a matter of education.
Yeah, no, I love that. Especially on the customer marketing side, because people aren't really going to move unless like you really educate them on why they should. Like whether we're trying to migrate them or upsell them on something, you know, once you're sort of locked into something, people won't budge unless there's a real good incentive, whether it's benefit based, whether it's sunsetting a certain product. But it really comes down to that context of making sure they know why. So educating is hugely important in my world as well.
Yeah, I mean, you live in an interesting world where like you've already got brand awareness. So it depends on what your goals are. Are they expansion within the account to different departments? Like, you can look at that as like almost demand gen within your existing accounts. Um, yeah, that's penetrating a new buyer potentially, and so a lot of these concepts will overlap. And then in others, like when you're talking about like expiring features or upselling into like more modern products and technology, that's where like maybe some of these things don't have as much of an impact because you've already got brand awareness, you've got some amount of loyalty, and and it's more about like just awareness and education of these types of things. But yeah, I think when it comes to like entering into, like, if you guys are launching a new product and entering into a space, and your customer, even though they are a customer, they're brand aware, they don't know that you do X, Y, or Z. Like, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly this ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's like where we're trying to really shift things a little bit because our approach has been pretty traditional, like a typical demand gen team where we're sending out some campaigns. We're trying to get customers to actually like fill out a form, raise their hand, say, "Yeah, I'm interested in this. Let me talk to sales." But we also have like a customer communications team and a customer success team that does all these things too. And so there's a very delicate balance between what we engage in versus what these other teams engage in, and making sure there's no like overlap in communication to make sure that we're not confusing people here, because they're going to hear
Right.
from somebody over here, they might hear from somebody over here, but then they're going to get this really hard sell from the growth team on the customer marketing side that's saying really the same thing, but I'm coming at it a little bit harder than everybody else. um, so that's like a really delicate balance that needs to be struck, especially with an organization like ours, publicly traded, big marketing team. We don't want to step on each other's toes, and so um, it's just a whole nother layer that needs to kind of get thrown in there from a communication standpoint. But yeah, very much like, yeah, these people are bought in, they're happy customers. We just want them to do more things with us, and so very much is awareness, but you know my responsibility essentially is to get them to adopt a new technology, to migrate to a new system within our platform, which requires a brand new license and requires a new contract that is a higher contract value. So um, yeah, it's interesting to kind of think about it from awareness to sell, because it very much like feels like I'm in that like demand gen role, but it strictly is customer marketing. You know what I mean? It strictly is to the customer themselves, who's already bought into the brand, who's already bought into the service, and it's making them just understand that, like, yeah, you like working with us, you like our software, but there's more to this, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think you can go through similar exercises, like just mapping out category entry points to specific product use cases and seeing like where are they already satisfied by their current contract and usage of your platform, and then where are there like total gaps, and building a content plan that creates awareness around those types of things, and not relying on the like the heavy sales email
Yeah, so
once, but
that's
like
where we're at
figuring
now.
out how we do that over
Yeah.
time,
Yeah, that's where we're at now. Is for the next year is like content development plan strictly for customers. We don't want to rely on the sales stuff. Like, reusing or regurgitating that messaging. It's going to be very contextual based, and we're going to invest heavily into customer specific approach for all that. Yeah,
Nice. Sounds cool.
yeah, yeah.
Like
No, it should be good.
a world I don't think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I took this role for. I mean, a big part of it was just like customer marketing. I've never really worked with a customer marketing team, and in this specific team was strictly focused on upsell, cross sell. So it's like, hey, we want to build this sector of customer marketing,
Hmm.
and it was just something I've never done before, and especially for like a big company like this, it's been pretty eye opening in terms of what we're lacking and where the opportunity is, and what leadership is thinking about. Um, yeah, there's a lot that we can do inside with an install base that you currently have.
Right, right. Yeah, cool. That sounds interesting. I mean, definitely like the core concept of marketing for the consideration set, and just to kind of like bring it all home, that we talked about a lot of things from a lot of different angles, but like if you can change your mindset of marketing for the click or marketing for the conversion to marketing for the consideration set, and knowing that the byproduct of doing those things right and thinking about those things properly is a click, is a conversion, is an engaged lead, then that's where your marketing program begins to thrive. You just have to give it enough time and space for it to develop, because it's not a short-term performance program. And so, yeah, I think there's crossover to what you're talking about.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the nurture programs, the long term approach to things, I think is the right move. Of course, there's going to be some short term sort of blitzes that you might have, but ultimately, yeah, this is the way marketing should be done today, 2025. But of course, things can always change.
Yeah, it would be fun next time is you use the word blitz, and I immediately kind of mentally recoiled like, ooh, I'm trying to like avoid that theme in talking about marketing, but you're totally correct that like you need campaigns, you need like
Well,
you need
I,
stuff
I,
like
I
that.
honestly, I speak that way because like that's the spot I'm in.
Yeah, no,
Because
no,
I'm like, because we're
but
trying
this
to
is
we're trying to get pipeline for Q4, and it's like, let's run something about this, let's run something about that, and like let's just get pipeline in for Q4 so that we can come out of it with in Q5, Q1, sorry, Q1 of 2025,
yeah,
with something that came from Q4, and it's like, yeah, we can do that, and then of
yeah,
course, we can do
no, I
that.
think no, but you're right in that like this is about balance. Like you do need short-term campaigns balanced with long-term brand. It isn't one or the other, and that's where people
Right.
get
Yeah,
things
yeah,
wrong. And so I think we're ultimately like revenue is oxygen, right? So like the short-term campaign stuff like it's revenue driving, short-term revenue driving activity that needs to occur. And so how do we think about it the right way? How do we resource it the right way? How do we balance that against our long-term the right way? So what I was going to say is it would be interesting for us to do our next episode all focus on short-term, all the things that we're seeing working on a demand gen type of mindset that is focused on conversion and clicks and activity. I think that could be interesting. I definitely have a lot to say. I'm sure you would have even more to say on that, given your role these days.
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. All right. Good
Awesome.
talk.
All right. Yeah, good talk. So that, yeah, I think we can probably wrap it up there. I know we were we're trying to keep this nice, short, and sweet, but you know, we get jamming on stuff and shit happens. Um, yeah, so that'll do it for this episode, The Marketing Grind. We'll come up with another episode in the next couple weeks. But yeah, great talk, Gary. Appreciate it. And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. See ya.
All right. Bye.